Hi weaving friends, today we're going to talk a little bit about loom buying decisions and how to really decide which is the right decision for you. I'm also wearing my work apron today. I like to think of it as my fiber arts apron because it protects my clothes when I'm spinning, from all those extra hairs and fibers that tend to come off and end up in your lap. Actually, I could have used this apron this morning when the cat was stalking me, insisting on getting on my lap. He was just in one of those affectionate moods. But I ended up with cat hair all over my skirt because he's shedding. Anyway, and sometimes when you're weaving, especially something if it's like cotton, it sort of sheds these fibers as you go along. So a work apron can be a good thing just for keeping those fibers off your actual clothes. But I want to tell you a little bit about this apron actually because I'm kind of proud of it. I wove the fabric, I dyed the fabric, and I sewed the apron. So this apron is actually a project from a wonderful class project that I did several years ago now called Japanese Journey. And I had this vision of a class not just teaching you weaving, but also giving you like a cultural experience and taking inspiration from that culture. I've only done this so far for Japan because how it ended up was kind of like 3 classes rolled into one. There are 3 projects in the class and each one is just magnificent and time consuming. For example, one of them has a sashiko embroidery pattern. Another one, we do shibori on the loom. And then we do the indigo dyeing as well. And then there's the apron project, which is quite a large project too. But I have to say that I'm actually really proud of that class. I think it's one of my masterpieces, if I'm allowed to say that myself. I'll leave a link for it down below. Currently it's only available to members of the online weaving school. Anyway, so I actually used a 10-2 cotton in its natural color and I wove that 10-2 cotton, a lot of weaving on my rigid heddle loom because it's quite a long apron, a lot of fabric. And then I dyed it with indigo dye and then designed and made this sort of crossover, this sort of crossed back apron, and it's pretty cool. I mean, amazing things that you can do with your weaving. Don't think that you just have to finish an item on the loom and then leave it as it is. Not if you don't want to, because what you're actually doing is weaving fabric, so you don't have to have fantastic sewing skills either. But I'm getting on a total tangent here. What I came here to talk about was instigated by a question from a student, which I thought was a great question. It is one that I've had many times before, and I've tried to kind of make content in the form of blog posts and videos to help people who have a similar question. But the thing is, the decision on what sort of loom you are going to buy, especially if it's a first purchase, is such a personal decision. So that's the first point that I want to make is what suits one person is not going to suit everybody else. So make sure that you take your time to research. If at all you have the opportunity to go to a guild or a friend of a friend or anyone who has a weaving loom where you can physically try it out. I never had that opportunity myself before I started weaving. It's worked out pretty well for me, but having had that experience, it would have been really helpful to be able to try out some looms first. Maybe I would have made different decisions, I don't know. I'm actually really happy with the decisions that I have made and where I'm at in my weaving journey now as a result. Okay, so this student who asked me the question of what loom to buy, she had actually borrowed a rigid heddle loom, a particular type of rigid heddle loom from a friend, and she found that she very fast fell in love with weaving, which tends to happen, I mean, who could try weaving and not love it, right? I don't understand anyone who could try it and not love it. So where she was at was, she was wondering, I'm going to purchase a loom. I have to purchase a loom because I love weaving so much. Do I go for a rigid heddle loom that's maybe a little bit different from the one that I've been using because I'd like a few upgrades? Do I go for a table loom or do I go for a floor loom? She did mention that someone who knows her very well said that she knew that she couldn't be satisfied until she had a floor loom. I mean, the same might have been able to be said of me. When I started out rigid heddle weaving, I was always going to end up with a floor loom. But that doesn't mean that you will, or that it's the best loom for you. As I said, it's just so personal. You'll have to excuse me for breaking in here so suddenly, but there's something I really want to tell you about. I have a YouTube membership tier now. It's called Kindred Weavers, and the idea is it's an extra place on YouTube where you can go for extra content. So if you really love my YouTube channel, I made Kindred Weavers for you. It's a very low cost monthly fee, and you get behind the scenes videos, you get members only videos. Every time I upload a new video to YouTube, as a Kindred Weaver, you get early access, you get priority commenting, you get to be part of an intimate little group where we all support each other. Be sure to check out the link below if that sounds interesting to you. Now I'll let you get back to the video. And so this student's fear, which of course is all of our fears, is that she might bite off more than she could chew. If she went ahead and said, I love weaving so much, after trying out this rigid heddle loom, I'm going to go for the big floor loom, and then she gets the floor loom and she's like, oh, you know, this is a lot. It is a lot. A floor loom can be a lot. There are weavers out there, many of them, who, especially before rigid heddles became really popular and readily available, who started out on a floor loom and they wouldn't want it any other way. Usually they had some sort of teaching, a helper, you know, someone who could mentor them, that sort of thing, a bit of support. So that makes a difference too. And so yes, there are lots of weavers who started out on a floor loom and stuck with it. But I think today we have so many options, and although that can make the decision a little bit more difficult, because which option is the right option for me is the question, but we can be helped in our decision by going through what our individual needs are, the size of the space that you have, the budget that you have, what you want to weave on a loom. That's a really important one. What do you actually want to be weaving? What are your goals? If you're going to be weaving a ton of yardage all the time and you know that you're going to be doing that, then something like a floor loom is going to be much more efficient for doing that than a rigid heddle loom is. If you want to be weaving fairly basic scarves and you're happy to do that for quite a while, then a rigid heddle loom is perfect. So I'm sorry if you came to this video looking for the right answer for you as to which loom you should purchase. My answer is that I can't tell you what to do, but I can share my own experience and you can listen to that and see what you think. Does it help you? Perhaps it does. There is, I've noticed, a tendency, not just in weaving but in life in general, for us these days, you know, we're a little bit spoiled. Us Westerners, we tend to be able to get the things that we want to get within reason. So there's a tendency to say, I'm going to get the best of the best right now because that's what I want, even if I have to go into debt for it, even if I have such a cramped space that it's difficult to work in. Having some patience and doing your research is really going to pay off in the long run. All right, so my story. And in case you're wondering, I'm sitting at the low yarn flex loom, but it's set up with the table loom attachment. So it's the rigid heddle loom, but I bought the conversion kit, and this is why you have this castle in front of us. I'm working on a project here. So my story was that I became fascinated with weaving, and I'd never woven on a loom before. I'd only seen, you know, some videos online, mostly of people weaving on floor looms. No table loom video. There wasn't anything really online at that time. Maybe a couple of rigid heddle videos, but not much from memory. Someone in an online craft group that I was in had a rigid heddle loom, just one person. And I quickly became fascinated with what she was doing. And she was willing to chat with me about it and she was very positive about it, and I decided that I really wanted a rigid heddle loom. So my first consideration at that time was that I had a very low budget, very low budget. But fortunately, my husband and I, and as a family, we were used to living frugally. It was just what we did. It was what we had to do, but it's our lifestyle as well. It still is. We're maybe not as frugal as we used to be because we don't have to be as frugal anymore. But we certainly still have that atmosphere of practical frugality in our lives. So I told my husband all about the loom, and he was very supportive. And so we started saving. This loom was going to be a birthday present for me. And I was also sharing, any experiences that I had with him so that he could see what this thing was that I wanted to purchase so much. And when it got close to the time of us having enough money to be able to purchase it, and this was, quite a long time ago now, so the looms were much cheaper than they are now, but I guess that's relative to income, inflation, all of that. So we finally had the money saved, and as I got close to the purchasing date, my husband said, "You're going to need a stand as well." He'd been looking online at all the different things that you could get. And so he insisted on me having a stand. That was a great decision. So I got the Ashford 24-inch rigid heddle loom along with the stand. And a lot of people have seen my stand in the videos. Yes, it's the old style stand, which I absolutely love, and I wish they still had available to buy, but they don't. So it's a non-folding stand, which I don't need it to fold. I've got the space for it. And it means that when you sit at it, there's no bar at your feet. It's like an open stand. You can pull your chair in, get really close. I love it. And it's also got little shelves at the sides, which is brilliant. So I spent a lot of time weaving on that rigid heddle loom, getting to know it. I would say that I didn't really know what I was doing for a long time. I got Jane Patrick's The Weaver's Idea book, which I recommend to all beginner rigid heddle weavers. And I basically went through all of the techniques and tried them out and learned as much as I could from that book. It is a fantastic book, and it's given me lots of exploration. And so from having a book as a starting point, you then, as you're trying out techniques, you think, well, what would happen if I did this? And what if I change this to something else? You start thinking for yourself and thinking more creatively. And then you come to things like, being able to weave with 3 heddles or whatever it is, like these things. It's a progression. So I was progressing with the rigid heddle, and I wove on it for years, and I enjoyed it. And then I started to look a little bit more at patterning, and I was really interested in weaving very intricate patterns if I could, as weave structures. And I knew for that from my research that would require more shafts. Now on my rigid heddle loom, I had woven maybe with 2 heddles at that time, maybe even 3, but I was really interested in the idea of having a loom that was built with multiple shafts already set up. A couple of reasons why I didn't go for a floor loom at that time. Number one is my back was in a really bad way for a couple of years. It was just really, really difficult, and it took a lot of chiropractic treatment to sort of get my back at a reasonable level again, so that I could just do like a normal level of activity and not have to spend so much time in bed. So I did have a chiropractor who really helped me with that over the course of a couple of years. Then, of course, there was the financial aspect of buying a table loom when I already had a rigid heddle loom. And then there was the space aspect that I didn't have a studio that I do now. I had a little corner of what we had in our house at the time was like a second living room. And so part of the living room was used, well, most of it was used for the kids with all their toys and lots of books and games and all that kind of thing. And then I had this little section of the room with this very same table. And that gave me a little bit of space. It was like a cozy corner that I could keep my stuff. So I didn't have a lot of space, but I was able to make space on my table. So I settled on buying the Ashford 8-shaft 80 centimeter table loom, which was pretty large. I don't know if I really realized how large it was going to be before I bought it, because it's hard to visualize these things, but it lived on the table and I wove on it from the table. These days, I will always prefer a stand if I can get a stand. Like I've just purchased a new table loom that I'm putting together, and I also purchased the stand for that because I just think it's way more comfortable than weaving on a table loom that's sitting on a table. If you have to do it though, I recommend that you have an adjustable chair, height adjustable, or you could have a height adjustable table. That matters to try and get comfortable, to get close to the loom, to get it the right height so that your shoulders aren't too fatigued, all of that good stuff. So anyway, I got this Ashford table loom. That was quite a learning curve, moving up from a rigid heddle to a table loom. Again, I used some really good books like Anne Dixon's Handweaver's Pattern Directory. That is still one of my favorite multi-shaft weaving books. Tried out lots of patterns from there, and I generally just really enjoyed weaving on the table loom. Over this time, I wove a scarf on there. I entered it into the Melbourne show, into a craft section, and it won first prize. And that was really a thrill because that was, I guess, maybe when I started to take my weaving a little bit more seriously and thought, wow, people like my weaving. You know, I won first prize. That was a really big deal to me at the time. And I won this great stack of really good craft books. That was the prize, as well as cash prize. And as I continued to weave on my table loom, my back had improved because I'd been having this treatment from the chiropractor. And I started to think, whereas once I had thought I could never weave on a floor loom, even though I had never tried it before, I just knew that I couldn't even sit there and do it the way that my back was. And I also knew how much they cost. But by this point, I was actually selling my woven items. So things were different because I was producing an income from the craft now. It wasn't just something that I was doing just for me. And so that made the idea of being able to have a floor loom a little bit more feasible. So after a few years of weaving on that table loom, I actually sold it, sadly, to fund the purchase of the new floor loom and started saving and saving for the floor loom. That's how we've always done things as a family and as a married couple, is we don't spend money that we don't have. So we save money, and if we can save enough for the things that we want, then we get them. And so eventually I was able to order the Louet David floor loom, 8-shaft, 10 treadles, and it's a 90 centimeter weaving width. It was a dream loom for me at the time because I really never thought that I would be able to buy it. I got it brand new. Again, when I purchased it, it was several $1,000s less than they are now. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, I'll make it pay somehow, because I felt guilty. It felt like such a luxury to spend that much money on something that was just for me. I said to him, I'll make it pay somehow. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I thought that I might be able to be a production weaver and offer like yards of hand-woven cloth. And I tried that, but there wasn't really a market for it at the time. People were more inclined to, buy a hand-woven scarf or towels or a finished item than they were to actually buy cloth, which kind of surprised me, but it is what it is. So that idea never took off, but what did take off was sharing videos on YouTube, sharing a couple of videos on YouTube of just me weaving on my rigid heddle loom and some stuff that I had learned on my own that I thought was really helpful. could be helpful to somebody else. And then people started asking me to make more videos, which was a massive surprise to me. Those couple of videos led to the online weaving school, led to me having my own design store, led to so many opportunities that I have now, and led to eventually my weaving business, which now supports my entire family. So when I said I was going to make that loom pay, I didn't know what I meant, but God knew what I meant. So what is my point in telling you all of this long drawn out story? It is that it's okay to have a progression in your weaving. You don't have to start at the top, wherever you think the top is. If that's a floor loom for you, you can start at something a bit more simple, a bit more affordable, a bit more manageable, smaller, all of those things. And you might stay at that point. There's a lot of people who start out rigid heddle weaving and they stay with the rigid heddle loom. And that's fantastic because it is what suits them best. And for me, I've got a bunch of looms now and I use all of them. Inkle loom, rigid heddle loom, table looms, floor looms, little teensy toy loom, and I use and enjoy all of them. But you can see how my weaving journey has been such a progression. And there are times where I had to sell one loom to get another loom. The weaving looms, they generally hold their value extremely well. If you have a weaving loom, you look after it, you store it properly, it's in great condition, you'll get a great price for it if you decide to sell it in order to fund your next loom. So whatever decision you make, it's kind of like deciding a career. It's not final, it's, well, this is what I'm going to do for now and I'm going to see how it goes. And if it works out really well, I'll keep doing it. And if it doesn't work out so well, I'll do something different. So you can do that in life. A lot of people feel stuck because they think, I've made this decision and now I have to stick with it. No, you don't. You can change, you can grow in a different direction, and that's normal and it's good in a lot of ways. Now, another huge advantage of having such a progression in your weaving journey is using building blocks to learn and to grow. The rigid heddle taught me so much about weaving in general. I started out just weaving on it, following books, not really understanding what I was doing. Eventually that knowledge came, that understanding. When I had that understanding and knowledge, that really helped me when I leveled up to the table loom. Because of course the principles in weaving are all the same, they're just on different looms with different functions and different ways of getting the same results. And then learning on the table loom, that was just so perfect, so that when I got my floor loom, it was like, okay, I can do this. I understand this loom, Of course there are differences again, because once you move from a table loom where you're operating everything with your hands, you're using the shuttles, you're operating the levers, and then you go over to this floor loom where you're using your whole body, it's not a hard progression. Because a table loom, in a way, it's like a little floor loom. It's kind of cut in half horizontally, and like the top half is the same, but the bottom half is different. That's how I think of it anyway. The bottom half of the floor loom has treadles and everything. That's different to the table loom, although some table looms you can get treadles for. But I think everything that you do in weaving can lead you to the next step, to the next progression. If you start out weaving on a little frame loom and you're using your shuttle all manually, it's still going to teach you about interlacements. It's going to teach you about yarns. It's going to teach you about finishing techniques and all different things. So don't be afraid of starting out, of choosing a point to start at and moving up from there. Okay friends, well I hope this was helpful to you. I am going to leave a bunch of resources in links down below in the description box because, as I said, I've made resources. I have so many articles on my website that cover all of these kind of topics. And if you just go over there and have a really good read of specific articles, I know it's going to help you to decide where your weaving journey is going to begin. Okay friends, that's it from me today. Until next time, happy weaving.